1 second. And it looks like we're live and recording. Welcome again to this webinar, the VIP webinar series that we do every Friday. Bill and I. Bill's on a car heading out south, I think, to some major event. And he's joining us by the car, as you can see from the video. And today's webinar is really about how we did, Bill and I made 70K, or actually probably more than that, in one weekend. We're going to talk about how we did the launch. We're going to talk, as I was designing this webinar yesterday, I decided this could be a 3-part webinar. It's a lot to share, and I'm sure Bill agrees as well. So you know, I'm going to do my best to share as much as I can here today. For Bill, hey Bill, I'm going to disable your video because it kind of looks like you're somewhere else. But if you have anything else, Bill, if you have anything to share, just raise your hand. I'll include you in. Okay, so like I said, you know, we're going to talk about the secrets of how we did this launch, and you know, feel free to ask any questions as we go along. I can dance and chew gum at the same time, so perfectly free to ask questions as you go along. Okay, so make sure you submit your questions via the chat box on your computer at the top of your screen if you're on your computer. So you know, you're in the right place if you're tired of struggling with attracting clients and sales. You're in the right place if you're tired of the same results in your business year after year. And you know, you're certainly in the right place if you're tired of getting nowhere. You know, marching or running in place in your business. And this may include the people who are pretty successful already, but they're not getting to the next level. You know, they may be working still pretty hard, harder than they like to in their business, without much free time. And I had someone do a strategy session with me this week, and that was certainly a primary complaint. And she did mention this thing about being like, you know, feeling like a guinea pig in a cage that goes round and round. You know, you might have seen those things. And you know, although she's very comfortable with her income, it's not getting her to where she wants to go. And so some of you may be in that place. And if you're tired of being in that place and want to go to the next level, then you're certainly in the right place here in the webinar. And you know, what we want to teach you to do is to create a flood of the right kind of customers. You know, some of you may have been in business for a while, and you may realize that, you know, you don't necessarily want to work with everybody. You know, there are certain people you want to work with. You know, we like to work with people who are ambitious, ready to go, decisive, in the mid-stage of their business or starting out, and they are willing to do what it takes to get to the next level within integrity, obviously. You know, you're in the right place if you're ready to have a clear focus for profit and satisfaction in the next year. Some of the biggest obstacles for people is that they get distracted by many things that lead them astray, and then they don't really produce the results that they're looking at. You're also in the right place if you're ready to concretely, and I do mean concretely, in very specific measured steps, up-level your business game and stop being an amateur, but really go to the professional level of business. And it's really quite a different game. It's a lot more savvy, a lot more sophistication, but it's also a lot more freedom. But it's also an investment, and it's also a lot more risk involved for some of you who are new to it. So, but if you're ready to do that, then you're certainly in the right place. So a little bit about me and Bill. You know, I've been coaching and mentoring people for about 24 years, since 1991. When I first started out, I was an engineer working on my business part-time. I had a software business that I was doing, actually consulting really, that I was doing on the side. And you know, I've gone through several iterations in the business, and there's a lot to share from an experiential point of view I'd like to share with you. I'm an author of 2 books on Amazon. One of those books is called More Money, More Time, Less Stress. What you call a very multi-talented coach, because I've had a vast degree of experience, both in the corporate side, executive side, as well as the business entrepreneurial side. And my specialties include marketing, sales team, daily efficiency and productivity. I have a huge networking Rolodex that I make available for people who have the proper branding. And so this is one of the things that Bill and I are very committed to, is to train people how to have a huge networking Rolodex themselves and help them build that. But you got to get certain stages and steps down first, which we'll try and share over this webinar. So I'm an owner of a successful coaching and training company here in the Bay Area. Been on the board of advisors for successful software companies in Silicon Valley. And I'm a mentor. I'm very proud of this. I'm a mentor at what's called the Grow Movement, which is a movement for training and coaching entrepreneurs in Africa. I have a special entrepreneur I work with in Malawi, and it's really great. I helped her create her first Facebook page. And I mean, she got a phenomenal number of likes just in the first hour. It's quite amazing to watch the delight on her face as she saw that. I'm also a leadership trainer for UC Santa Cruz, something called the Praxis Group, which is a group of college students dedicated to making a difference in the world, especially through microcredit, which are loans of $300 or less for entrepreneurs all over the world. Bill Belieu, my partner in crime, is a PhD professor at social media marketing, Silicon Valley. Has more than 90 million hits on his website. He's very modest about that. Bill has a meetup reach of about 16,000 members in his combined meetups. And he's a much sought after speaker in the world of social media. In fact, he's on his way to Shanghai, I think in a week or two, to speak there about content marketing. That gives you a sense of who we are. A couple of testimonials here. For myself, Rob Ross, a realtor, client of mine, working with me for a while. Last year, he had a 40% increase in his income. This is not pittance, and this is like in the order of tens of thousands of dollars for him. Made a huge difference for him. Charlotte Jacobs is another client that I've worked with. Today, she's a $1 million earner. Her and her husband, they've impacted tens of thousands of people around the world. I've helped her triple her income if you first started with me. And the principles that I teach her are some of the principles that she uses to teach other people as well. So I'm very, very proud of my clients. And I hope that some of you would become our clients as well, so we can help brand you as well through our testimonials and our case studies in the future. I want to reassure you, and I'm going to get to content here very quickly, I promise you. But for some of you, I know in the last week I've talked to a lot of you. A lot of you are really working hard for a sale. Some of you are in different kinds of businesses where it's a little bit more rigid, and the challenges, and you have up and down results. Is kind of encouraging in a way to see other people's making it in your industry, but it's also discouraging in the sense that you're not seeing yourself move forward. And some of you are not having the balance while you're trying to really increase your results. And there is a solution to that. There is a way that you can create balance and increase your results. In fact, actually, they should go hand in hand. Now, that doesn't mean that things are going to be hunky-dory. There's always a price to pay. There's always an investment to make. But I say it's a worthy investment to make the way that we do it, because there are longer-term results that are good and great for you, waiting for you. Okay. You can make it too. The trick is really to up the ante and commitment. And I don't mean working harder. I mean commitment. And commitment means you may have to invest more in yourself, in the business, in order to break the cycle or the lethargy of where you're at. Sometimes you're at a plateau. In order to get to the next level, there's no other alternative perhaps but to invest in yourself, money or time or energy, to learn, to educate yourself, to shift your thinking. Bill and I have been around the block many, many times. We have gray hairs and loss of hairs to show for it. But all kidding aside, we've probably gone through altogether probably about 20 transitions. I mean, minor and large transitions in our life where we really had to look at our business, how we approach it, to learn from our failures. I really have a good relationship with failure. It doesn't mean I'm a failure. It means I have a good relationship with it, which means I'm willing to fail. And that's very important to learn how to do in business, because if you're not willing to fail and try and test things, then it's very difficult to really move ahead. Now, I'm not asking you to do ridiculous things or unsafe things or things that are very, very highly dangerous. I'm asking you to weigh the risk and the return on investment and make wise decisions, but to stretch yourself. And you'll need to do that along with creating accountability and structures and systems at a much higher level to make sure that you're on pace. So I want to talk about a successful 70K launch that we did And there are 3 points three secrets I want to cover today. The first secret is that there's a shift in thinking required to make large results. And I'm going to talk about that shift in thinking. And this is not in any kind of woo-woo stuff. It's not new age stuff. It's actually very, very business-minded thinking that you have to adopt. The second secret is messaging that converts into customers. You have to learn how to market, but specifically learn how to message accurately and well to your customers so it hits them very well and on the specific sensitive points where they are sensitive to pains in their life, things that they know are not working. And if you're not messaging to both the pain points as well as where you want to lead them to in terms of what I call a glorious future or a golden solution, if you're not leading them to that future and you're not showing them what the truth is of the pain points, then you're not really serving your customers, you could say. Whether you're selling products or services doesn't matter. You really have to emphasize this. This even applies to the luxury market. At some level, you also still have to show the pain points, even for rich people who want to buy from you. And you also want to show where they could go, right? So, marketing, interestingly, even though marketing has gone more online into the internet, it seems like it's more modern. Most of the principles in marketing haven't changed, ever since marketing was conceived. It's still the same basic principle of how to sell to a human being. And you have to understand how a human being thinks in order to message accurately. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Then the first secret, or the most important secret we'll cover last, is the investor and entrepreneur mindset, a unique but critical distinction that separates the amateurs from the professionals. Something that you really want to learn to start internalizing for yourself and start practicing, not just understanding the distinction, but practicing it as well. Okay, let's quick check here for any questions. Great. Then we'll make a special offer at the end, so make sure you stay for that special offer. I'm sure a lot of you will enjoy that offer. And my promise here, again, as Bill and I always promise, is to do our best to give you all the information as I can. You might notice I'm talking as fast as I can, which is quite unlike me. I tend to talk a little slower than this, but I'm trying to give you as much information as I can as I go on and cover all the points that people have asked me to cover on this webinar. My intention is to cover as much as possible, but given the limited amount of time, there's only so much I can cover. The truth is, you're not going to learn everything at a free webinar. I mean, it's just not what's going to happen. It just doesn't make any sense. The beauty is always in the details. So we'll do our best to present the details as much as we can. And if you have any questions, feel free to type in those questions at the top of your screen if you're on the computer. All right, so secret number 3, the shift in thinking required to make large results. So this thinking is really in how you commit, how you make a commitment. And what I'm going to invite you all to start thinking or shifting your thinking is to start assessing the return on investment versus risk for all the decisions that you're making in your business and your life, for everything really. Because if you're not assessing or training yourself to assess or measure the return on investment versus risk for all the options in your life, then you're not training to think as an entrepreneur, as a professional entrepreneur. So return on investment versus risk is one of the first topics that people learn in school, MBA, in finance, in management sometimes. The top schools always have the best texts are usually the financial management texts, and this is usually one of the first topics that people cover. And unfortunately, even for the people who go to MBAs, they forget about this distinction. And it's a very important distinction to learn because you learn the relationship between commitment and how you can prevent burnout and loss if you understand the distinction of return on investment versus risk. So what do I mean by this? So ROI means return on investment, for those of you who don't know. Return on investment means, very simply put, mathematically, it's how much money you make divided by how much you invest. Now you can convert the time that you spend into a project or a business or an option or a market into dollars. If you have a rough dollar per hour that you're making, that you've measured, you make on an average $500 per hour. Then every 2 hours you spend, it'll be $1,000. If you spend 10 hours on a particular marketing project, then it's 10 times whatever your hourly rate is. And then whatever return you get should be at least 2 or 3 times that amount, and you should have that be a target for every market or every investment, or whether you invest in a coaching program or whatever, over an appropriate time. So if you invest into a program for 1 year, and you spend $12,000, you want to expect to get at least 24 or 36K more in the next 1 year or the next 1 year and a half. You want to leave an appropriate amount of time for that measurement, right? But you also want to measure it against the risk. What are the risks of going after that particular market? What are the risks of spending time on that particular project? And what most people don't realize is the biggest risk is what you're giving up in order to spend more time on that project. So I know a lot of you are doing different things. You're listening to different audios, you're listening to different trainings, you're going on different sites, you're trying out different programs, you're trying different kinds of social media. And the more of those things you try, the more unsuccessful you're probably going to be at some point, because your opportunity cost is going to go up. So you could look at this simply as, you're either going to focus on certain high quality projects, or you're going to focus on a lot of low quality projects. Now, this is very important to understand. And it's not just projects, but it's also certain things that you spend your time on. If you're spending a lot of time on certain things that are not really generating satisfaction or money for you, then I invite you to really start looking at that. So like for me and for Bill, our highest return on investment stuff is when we're selling, or when we're writing content, or when we are generating strategy. So Bill and I meet very frequently and talk very often on Skype to discuss strategy and tactics. And you see, those are usually the highest return on investment times for us. And so you want to look at stuff, if you're spending a lot of time on things that are not amounting to much, then you really want to examine that. So there are 2 scenarios here that I put in the PowerPoint slide. The first scenario is where you have fewer focused, high quality investments of money and time. One of the best investments I ever made when I first started out in my business back in 1991 was hiring my first mentor. It was very expensive. It cost me like $1,000, it cost me $1,000 a month. And I was earning about $40,000 with a bonus every year. So I had to make it work, and I made it work. And I made a lot of it work without credit cards, back then. And I made it work, and I had a good, very solid return on investment. I think my memory serves me right, it's about 3 to 4 times within about 6 months or less. I really wanted to make sure I got a good return on it. But that was that's an example of a high quality investment. And I was looking around and looking at some of the other people who would tell me, oh, you got to do these other seminars, with this business person, this salesperson, and they did a lot of seminars, but they were getting nowhere. And I said, I want to work with this one guy, have him really give me a lot more attention on a day-to-day basis. He was very truthful with me, honest with me. We would weigh decisions. I would move through decisions much quicker. And I noticed that these other people who were doing many unfocused, low-quality investments of money and time were not getting anywhere. It's kind of like you're shooting a lot of small paper bullets rather than shooting 2 or 3 cannonballs, right? Apologize for my militaristic analogies here, but those are very accurate. You want to make sure that what you do has a good impact. One of the best pieces of advice I got from a Silicon Valley entrepreneur back in the 90s was, one of the things you got to learn is to focus on fewer things. The lesson I kept forgetting when I was younger. But now, it's becoming more and more internalized. Life can be very short, so it could be very long too, but, I wouldn't bank on it necessarily. Life could be very short. So you want to make sure that whatever time you spend, precious time that you spend in a business is yielding you good results. You're measuring it. Make sure you get good returns in it. Why is this important? Why was this important in our launch? Because, Bill and I really wanted to make this effective. So we were getting a lot of input from different people, and some of it was very good. Some of it, we weren't sure what's going to work, but we're willing to try and measure the results. So we did a lot of mini failures here and there to try things out, but we were very selective about what we experimented on. We didn't want to experiment at everything. We wanted to try a few things, think through the market, figure out what the market wants, did some interviews to figure out what that target market really wanted. And that resulted in our opt-in pages for webinar having more than 50% opt-in rates, which is really extraordinary. I wasn't quite aware of how extraordinary it was until I talked to some experts in the industry, and they were quite surprised. So that means for the number of visitors that come to our webinar opt-ins, about more than half of them will actually go on and opt in to our webinars. And that's really quite good. But that came from us really investigating the market, understanding the market. In our program, we spend about 4 months just trying to understand our markets with our clients, so we can adjust and create the best sales engines that will convert people into clients. And you got to understand how to do that. You got to understand your market first, then design a sales funnel that converts. You don't want to do it the other way around. It doesn't work very well. You want to understand your market first. Now, sometimes there's only so much you can do in understanding your market. At some point, if you're smart and savvy enough and you're discussing this with some people like good coaches that I have, then you can quickly decide, okay, enough of research, time to really experiment and try it out. But that can be very tricky unless you are discussing it with someone. It's a good reason why I paid $20,000 for a coach of mine, to look at this kind of stuff along with me. It's quite a bit of money, you'd think, but that's a good return on investment for me, because I know even with my expertise, I can make mistakes. See, so it's good to have Chris, my coach, look over my shoulder and see, that may be a little tweak right there, and that can be adjusted right there. And those are the things that make a huge difference. So again, I can't emphasize this enough. You want to start looking. A good practice would be look at some of the things that you're focusing on right now. Does it really make sense for you to focus on some of those things? So again, the takeaway from the section is focus on high quality stuff, high quality investments, rather than many low quality investments of time. And hope that makes sense. And again, if you have any questions, which I've already got a couple of questions on this by email, I appreciate it. And I'll be answering those questions pretty soon here. All right, secret number 2. You got to learn how to create compelling messaging for return on investment. What I mean by this is the wordings and the style of the wordings that go on your sites, on your website, on what you say to people, how you introduce yourself, all of that has to be compelling. So one of my coaches, Vrinda, tells me, you got to put your best foot forward all the time. And that includes being able, again, very important point, excuse me, is to understand your client. Make sure you understand the market and your client. So how and what you message in your marketing is critical. And it makes a difference between selling and waiting for long periods of time for people to buy. Now, some of you may have higher price points. So some of those higher price points, and some of you are selling at the $50,000, $100,000 level, especially some of my clients who are listening in. So your longer periods may be there, but as much as possible, we want to shrink that period as much as we can. Those of you who are selling at about $1,500 to $2,000, $3,000 level, you also want to pay attention, because you want to shrink that time for people making decisions as much as possible. And see, the difference is, again, how well you compellingly message. And that, again, is predicated on how well you understand your market. So you want to understand the market, then design your sales funnel, and then based on design your sales funnel, create compelling messaging that goes into your wordings and your site. So it has to be in that form, right? If you try to do it backwards, it gets kind of weird. Most people do it backwards. They try different wordings and then they test it. It doesn't make any sense. It's kind of haphazard. No sensible business person would do that. And I'm not trying to insult anybody. I'm just trying to really provoke you to really think a little bit more about your business. So, customers think the same way as you do probably, because they're really looking in a subconscious way at whether what you offer is going to create a good return on investment. And that return on investment is what the future could look like when they work with you or they buy your product. So you got to be able to present that, the future that you can create with them is really bright and looks great, and there's credibility behind it. So there's a return on investment that you must presence in your wording. So for example, when you put the benefits, you want to be clear that they are benefits that the client appreciates. A lot of people tend to put benefits based on guests, and sometimes that's okay. It's a good place to start from. But as you go along, you have to test and make sure that your clientele is responding to those benefits, that they actually find those benefits are relevant to them. So again, this is where, now in our process, we have our clients interview. I did tons of interviews with my prospects and clients in my meetup groups, surveys, selective surveys of certain people, certain demographics, testing it out, figuring out what the pain points are. Quite a lot of work that went into it, but I tell you, it was time well spent. My coach driving me doing it was great. I mean, I'm glad he did that. And it was certainly a good return on investment for me to do, is to figure out really what is the future for the clients. What do they want? The second thing that I discovered and learned was, what are the pain points? What are the things that people in our clientele really are suffering with and finding very uncomfortable to be with? What are the priorities of pain points? What are the higher priority pain points? What are the lower priority pain points? More importantly, what is the timeline of their pain points? Some people want to handle certain pain points or certain issues or problems right away. Other people want to handle other challenges or pain points or problems further down the line. So you got to figure out what the timeline is, what's more urgent, and that will tell you how you can immediately begin to engage people. That's important to understand, that you have to design it like that, okay? So someone's asking, what am I saying? It's a little hard to hear me, I know, but the phrase is pain points, not peak points. Pain points. So like painful, what is painful for your customers? What are they suffering through? What are the things that they're dealing with that are emergencies or urgent things that you have to deal with? Those are the things that you want to really look at, okay? So again, it's pain points. What are the painful points that you want to discover? And that comes from interviewing, talking to your clients, interacting with them. So, when Bill and I designed this program that we have for 1 year, it's called the VIP 1 Year Academy. In it, we actually have two parallel processes. One is we do the target marketing and the strategic work to find out what the pain points are. But we also develop your blogging and your content marketing so we can converse with your clients and find out even further what the real pain points are. And when you do those two parallel processes, you start creating a very good, solid design for your sales funnel. That's important to understand, that your sales funnel has to be well designed, and inside of that sales funnel that's well designed, you want to have compelling messages that clearly outline what are the pain points. So in preparing for this webinar, I interviewed a couple of prospects, and I found out that some of the pain points were, guess what? The pain points that I shared with at the start of this PowerPoint. Are you sick and tired of marching in place? That was literally some of the wordings that people used. Actually, two clients independently came up with that wording, tired of marching in the same, not clients, but prospects actually, tired of marching in the same point or the same place in their business. So you got to find out what those pain points are. People tired of, if you're a chiropractor or a healer or a healing person, person has a healing business, for example, a naturopathic business, for example, the pain point could be people sick and tired of having low sexual energy. Are they sick and tired of not being able to digest their food and staying up, and that keeping them up at night? Are you done with dealing with an abusive husband? As an example, right? So you want to really emphasize what are the pain points, and then also talk about the future. So if you're sick and tired of marching in the same place, then what would a future look like in terms of business for you? So we have 6 steps here to get to creating a very successful launch in your business and tripling your income in the next 2 years, right? Something like that would be a bright enough future for people to see based on their pain points. So these are, again, examples, okay? But I want to understand that you really have to delve into this world and understand how to write good copy on your sites. But again, you want to follow the flow. Understand your clientele, then design your sales funnel, and then test your sales funnel with compelling messaging to refine that. So, for your clients to invest, the future must pull them forward, but the pains must also push them forward as well. So you have to have both the future expressed in your marketing copy as well as the pain points. Very important to do that. Okay. All right. So secret number 1, And this is the investor and entrepreneur mindset. This is probably the biggest one for most people. And if you get this one, you get a lot of it. And I do mean a lot of it. And that is that you want to shift from, you want to shift your mindset towards being a very professional investor and entrepreneur. See, investors and entrepreneurs really look at return on investment versus risk, which I described earlier. They're always looking at that when they're making investment decisions, not just for their own money, but also for their time. What they're going to spend time on is assessed based on what they're going to get in terms of a return. They're going to invest, even 10 hours of their time in a week in a certain project. They want to make sure that they get 10 times, 4 times, or 5 times the amount of money within a certain appropriate period of time. So, for example, whenever I do a seminar, which I rarely do these days, but when I do a seminar, I do a couple of things. One is I assess how much I want to make back from the seminar. If I'm going to spend $5,000 in the seminar, I want to make sure that the next year I make at least $10,000 back based on what I learned out of the seminar. I also schedule a whole day. This is true, okay? A whole day after the seminar, so if it's a weekend or a day, to write down and put into structures and systems how I'm going to implement all the things that I learned in the seminar. A lot of people don't do that. That's why a lot of time is wasted in seminars. So you got to have that kind of investment mindset and this pertains to your marketing as well. When you select between one form of marketing versus the other, when you're scattering your time across many, many different kinds of marketing. I know a lot of you are trying to network at different places. You go to different networking places, you're hurrying along, going to 50 different networking places, trying different things, but you're doing that and then doing social media and then doing something else and then trying to serve your clients and trying to do filing and administrative tasks and managing a family. It's quite a lot of time. I'm not saying stop managing a family, but I'm saying, if you're being torn apart by all these things, you got to really look seriously at what you're going to invest your time and money in, what you want. And you got to assess it in terms of ROI versus risk. The other thing I invite you to look at, and this is the more important point here, is to commit to a larger game. And some of you are really used to playing at a small level, even though you think you may be inching up. See, at some point, you got to decide if you're going to really focus and put some money in and time down in a structure that will really make sure that you succeed. And I've done this a couple of times in my life where I hired a coach which helped me really focus one thing. I had a structure in place to follow. I had a plan. I had somebody I could work with on a daily basis, more frequent basis. I had a really strong focal point. And I got rid of all the other stuff I was trying to do. And I was doing a lot of networking at that point. 1991, there was no social media. There was only networking or door knocking, which I did a fair amount of. But I stopped doing a lot of door knocking after a while. I started doing more calls based on my coaching. And I found that was more effective back then. Now, you don't have to necessarily do calls, but it's still very effective. It can be a very effective way to do business, but you don't have to. You can do social media marketing, you can do other kinds of outreach or attraction, client attraction is more effective. But my point is that you may have to commit to a larger game while assessing return on investment versus risk. Now, this might look a little risky to you to go to a larger game. It might involve some investments at a bigger level. See, for example, a lot of people are trying to spend $5 here and there on Facebook advertising. It's probably not going to amount to much for you. Probably not over the long term. You may have to up your investment, for example, to $500 and do it smart. And that may give you a lot more returns. You may have to look at where you're wasting time on certain kinds of marketing, especially networking, if it's not turning out for you. That you may have to spend more time on educating yourself and getting a coach to work with you one-on-one so that you can really get clear on your strategy and your plan. You may have to look at your strategy overall and your plan and see where you need to cut out certain things that are not working out for you and put in things that are. Now, it might sound like a broken record here, but it bears repeating. I know a lot of people don't get this. And it's important to understand that you really got to do that. You got to really cut out all the stuff that it's not working out for you. So at some point, though, you got to really commit to doing something at a larger level, which means you may have to spend more money on a coach or a business consultant or a marketing program to really get you to that level. And this game is only for people ready to go to the next level and give up their suffering. And I do mean give up the suffering, because if you're trying many, many different things and not getting anywhere, that's the definition of insanity. At some point, you got to cut out that insanity and try something different that will make you a lot happier. So an entrepreneur is a master at the following things. They have a higher degree of organization. And this usually entails some delegation, quite a lot of delegation. So a lot of stuff that I do, I delegate to my two admins that I work with. I have a tech admin too that I work with from time to time. I have another team member coming on board, possibly as a web person. And I try to delegate as much as I can. And I indicate here in the PowerPoint slide, personal management must be handled. You have to learn how to manage your personal life. If you're scattered a little bit, you're not really managing a lot of that, if you tend to get distracted, that comes with practice. In 3 months so in our program, you can really turn that around, get way more focus and reduce the stress. Stress usually comes with a lack of focus as well. They're like brothers and sisters. Stress and lack of focus go hand in hand. If you learn how to manage your stress, you typically learn how to do it by increasing your focus. And that means that you got to learn how to manage your personal time, your time management, etc. The second point of an entrepreneur is that we tend to plan longer term. We're looking 12 months, sometimes 24 months. Bill and I are already looking 24 months ahead and what the second year out is going to look like for us. And we're making, very concerted, very intentional plans in that direction. Why is that beneficial? Because the longer term outlook you have, the less intense the shorter term problems will occur for you. If you're having short term problems, right, trying to decide between what kind of social media platform to use, those will pale in significance when you look at the bigger challenges ahead. Because when you have a bigger future, you're looking 2 years out, and you want to, convert your business into $1.5 million per annum, going from 200K, then, you're going to have a lot more challenges that you have to deal with. And so the urgency for dealing with all the smaller challenges goes up, because you want to get to the bigger goals. You're going to have some bigger challenges ahead, but you got to get there. But if you have the excitement of knowing in 12 months this is what your life is going to look like, my wife and I already started planning like 12 months out what our vacations could look like, based on how it's going to go. That's what's going to drive you more. You got to have that drive and that future when you start looking long term. The third part here is developing your marketing in two areas: your content marketing and your conversions. So you got to learn how to create more content on your site. And that's what Bill talks about in our programs. We help our clients build their content, both in terms of quantity and quality. So the more content you have, the more credibility you have online. So a lot of people know me in the small business networking realm. Why? Because there's a lot of content on me online, especially on Meetup. If you do certain searches online for business coaches or business networking, you see my image come up with my content, my articles, and my videos. So that builds a lot of credibility for people, for me. And you want to start doing that for yourself. Because remember, if your competition, you got to look much better. You got to look better than your competition. And so building content online that positions you well is very critical to doing that. The other thing you got to learn to do is to convert your prospects into clients. That's both online as well as offline. So your online and offline ability to close actually go hand in hand. People who are very good at closing offline, by offline I mean in verbal conversations, not online conversations. When you can close people, convert a prospect into a client offline, verbally, you typically are going to be good with some training to close people, so to speak, online as well. In other words, you can write very good, compelling copy that engages people and has people sign you up or pay for your services or buy your product. So conversion is also very important. It's important to understand how to do that. And I gave you some distinctions already in how to convert, and that's making sure that you create a big enough future for your clients or your prospects, but at the same time, understand what their pain points are so that you can message clearly to those pain points and be able to have them see the urgency of taking you on as someone they want to work with. Okay. The most important thing here is also to invest in education, practice, and consistency. See, the beauty in your business development is going to be in the details. Every day, the decisions you have to make. And the quicker you make those decisions, the faster you are able to move through them, the faster you will develop results. See, most people are stuck because two levels, because there are subconscious decisions and conscious decisions they need to make. Subconscious decisions are decisions, that they don't even realize that are having them at an impasse. It could be philosophical decisions, like, there could be a conflict in their values, a perceived conflict in their values in their business. You may say, well, I want to have more free time with my family, but I also want to make more money. But making more money occurs like having less free time with your family because you've got to spend more time at work. So now you've got a conflict and you haven't resolved that. And you want to resolve that quickly. That's why education, practice, consistency in a dialogue with someone like a coach is what tends to move people a lot faster. There's a good reason why Olympic athletes and all the best best business professionals I know still have coaches in different areas sometimes. It's because they really get the return on investment in education and in the dialogue with a coach. It's very important to understand that. Okay, practice and consistency is what makes masters. And so if you're feeling stuck right now and kind of like, I don't know where to start, we have some solutions for you coming up here pretty soon. Okay, so stay tuned. We have an offer we're going to make that I think you'll find very useful in how to take all this stuff, put it together in your mind, connect the dots, customize it to you, and have it make sense in the next 1 year and really create the results, and have the next 12 months and 1 year really be something that a year that really was where you learn to make solid results. It's good. It's important to understand how to be a rainmaker. So you just don't learn to, just do it one time, but over and over and over again, and then teach other people to do the same thing. So, so again, the takeaway here is you want to learn to commit to a larger game. When you commit to a larger game, by the way, something else happens. There's a fire that's lit underneath you that you cannot get by playing at a smaller level. It's night and day for most people. It's like two different universes of entrepreneurs. There's the entrepreneur that has very little at stake because they're not playing a larger game or playing a small game. And then there's the entrepreneur who's playing a larger game, who's investing more in himself, wants to get a return on investment. It's a very different world. When you plunk down $20,000, $30,000 in something and you're focusing on it, now you're invested. Those are the people who usually are doing something. If you are someone who's procrastinating and not getting things done, that's usually where you get laser-like. When you start investing in yourself and you value yourself in the business more, and you commit to a larger game, and you are, that makes a huge difference. By the way, that's also, I understand this very well. That's why when I find a very good coach, I'm willing to spend the money, because I understand when I spend a lot of money, the intensity goes up in a good way, not in a bad way. If it's going up in a bad way, it's probably not going to work. By bad way, I mean it's putting too much stress on you, probably not good. But if it puts some fire underneath you and goes, okay, I spent this money on Sunil or Bill, now I got to do something about it. Yeah, you're going to do something about it, I promise you. Okay. So that's our secrets here. A case study here really quickly on this is a real estate couple who I worked with, and they were doing what a lot of people were doing in real estate. They were investing in a lot of programs, different programs, trying different things, trying different social media, trying different kind of direct mailer programs, and they were getting very little returns. Sometimes once in a while I get a good return, but then it would go back down again. But most of the time, very little and very low returns. Arguments were a constant theme of the day. They were arguing. There was a lot of stress because of the lack of return on investment. Both were dissatisfied with their future. They felt like they were marching in place. They were thinking of giving up about the real estate game, in fact. But they wanted more. And this is the key thing. They really wanted more, not just for themselves, but for their family and for their community that they were in. So we started working together, and results within 1 year of applying all these principles that I just shared with you, we shifted to fewer focused investments. So we started looking at their marketing, and we threw out all the things that were not giving a good return on investment. We investigated the markets, and we found that these were the mailers and certain isolated social media were the things that were working, giving a return on investment. And they were also getting into the pain points of the clients. And that's important to understand. Okay, so in the words of the husband, less time spent on stupid stuff. Their quote, okay, and more time on building a future, which is what they were interested in doing. So it's 150% growth in 1 year. No small pittance. Okay, this is significant in order of several hundreds of thousands of dollars of income coming into them. Also started to garner more respect in the business locally for themselves and nationwide. Started getting a lot more recognition. People are asking, how did they do that? What was their secret? And a quote from them again, whole different ball game for us now. That's their experience of life right now. So this stuff really works if you use it. And a question I'm always asking people, in fact myself, are you hungry for more from life? See, I ask myself this question too, and it's okay if you're not. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. And sometimes I'm not. I'm pretty satisfied right now. But sometimes I'm really hungry for more, like that kid in the middle in the PowerPoint. If you're looking at the PowerPoint, right, I feel like that's, I'm really hungry for more. I want more. I want to have more of the glee in life. When I was a kid, I used to imagine my life was all about creativity and daydreaming. I daydreamt a lot about what life could look like if I tried this, tried different things. My garden, was an exhibition of how much glee I had of life because I was trying all kinds of different experiments. I had fish ponds, tortoises. I got a guinea pig that I was keeping in a very specially designed cage that I thought was comfortable for him. I was always experimenting. My father would come back and laugh all the time, And I want more of that. I like that kind of lifestyle of trying different things. And I know some of you have that too. They're hungry for maybe a different style from me, but you're hungry for more. And you want to ask yourself, what are you willing to invest in order to have that happen? And one of the things you got to do is you got to learn to trust yourself. And I do mean this because especially those of you who have been in business for a while, even for those of you who are new, you have certain things that other people want. Even if you don't have the experience, you have the ability to put something together that organizes data and knowledge that can be conveyed to your clients. And it can be done very valuably, and it can be done very effectively. If you have a product that makes a difference, you want to look and see, that trust yourself that, what you produce is not a fraud. It's something that can really help people. Some people, ask me, tell me, they felt like a fraud. They weren't sure that what you produce was really valuable for people. Well, the best way to do that is to test it out. Test out the market, see if it actually works for you. But the most important thing is to learn to trust yourself. And trust is, there's trust at an emotional level, but it's also like building your reliability with yourself. And the best way to build reliability is to measure it. Most people think they're not very reliable because they haven't really intentionally created a project and then measured the results to see if they could improve on themselves and actually deliver. See, if you give up too soon, you're not going to discover how much you can trust yourself, how much you can rely on yourself. And once you get to that stage where you can reliably create a 70K launch, in a couple of days with preparation, etc. When you can do that, and you can do that repeatedly, rinse and wash again and improve it and make it better, then your trust in yourself and your reliability is going to go up to the roof. And I promise you that. I do promise you that. The only way that you can fail in that is if you're mentally ill. And I trust that you're not, or mentally defective, I would say. If you have something wrong with your hormones or your brain, anyway, you get the point. But if you have numbers and results coming back to you, then and measured ones, then you're going to build your trust more. But you see, you have to trust in yourself first in order to experiment that, try it out, so you can build the numbers. So you have numbers behind you now, and numbers don't lie. results and numbers don't lie in your business. If you're producing numbers and they're increasing, nobody can touch you. Nobody can critique you. People can say whatever they want about you, but and you'll be probably respected more than you realize. So what we're offering here is those of you who are ready. Some of you may not be, and I understand. Those of you who are ready, and you're ready if you're nodding in your head, going, I think I'm ready to really go on to the next level, learn how to make 70K launches in my own style, learn how the specifics of how I can customize what Sunil and Bill are saying to my own business. Then what we invite you to is it's a free, there's no charge for this at all. There's no charge at all. Free, very influential person VIP strategy session with me. And there are limited seats for this, and it requires an application. To apply for this, you got to go to the website. And the website is www.yourvipss.com. So that website is www.yourvipss, standing for strategy session.com. So once again, because I always get questions on this, is www.yourvipss.com. And what we'll do is we'll spend some time with you, an hour or less sometimes, depending on how much time we need, to create a one-year plan to up-level your market audience. And, we're very honest about it. And, if it's not going to work out, we feel like, what you have may not fit with what we do, we'll tell you. And we'll give you professional suggestions on, regardless of whether you do our program or not, we'll give you professional suggestions on how to move your business forward. So this is designed to really serve, but we are going to take applications, and you have to fill out the application very rigorously. Make sure that you fill out all the details that we need. Don't give in one-word answers. Try and give us more data. What are your objectives? How much money you want to make for the next year? How many clients? What kind of conversion rates you're looking for? How large of a database? Try to make it realistic if you can. And we will work with you if we approve your application. We'll do a session with you, and we'll call you back within by the end of Monday. We'll call you back to set up a time. So again, that website is yourvipss.com. Okay, I want to do a quick summary here. Actually, I'm going to skip the summary in the interest of time and move towards the Q&A. So I've got a couple of questions here. And let's see. What is this one here? All right, so first question is, what is ROI? Okay, ROI is return on investment. It means it's how much money let's just look at it very simply. How much money you intend to or think you will make in a particular marketing project, as an example, versus how much you invest. So you invest $5,000 and you expect to get $20,000, then that's a 4 times return. So you want to get at least, 2 times, 3 times, or 4 times return. Again, some people ask me, what's a good return on investment? It depends is the answer. I'm not trying to evade the question. It just depends. If you're investing a small amount and a small amount of time, you may expect a larger investment, if it takes up too much of your time, for example. So it really depends. If you have a question about what's an appropriate ROI, I would suggest doing the strategy session, because it's impossible to give a overall answer for that. You want to just look at it from a customized point of view, from your own particular situation. So do the strategy session with us, and we'll answer that question. But a return on investment is basically return divided by investment mathematically. Okay. How to find out pain points? Okay, that's a good question. The way we do it is we analyze data online, or we try to buy data sometimes cheaply or affordably, preferably, about your competition, about the target markets, about your audience. We also do the most valuable thing we've done, and I've done myself, is to interview prospects in your target market. And there are certain specific questions you can ask them. Okay, and again, those questions can vary, but they're typically in two categories. What are the pain points? What are the challenges you're facing, sir? That's one example of a question. What are your objectives? Where would you like to be? How are these challenges interfering with your objectives? We want to understand that so that we can garner our solutions to them So when they come to a website, they go, "Wow, this person really understands me." So interviews and analysis is one way that we look out and find out the pain points. What do you mean by risk includes opportunity cost? Oh, good question. I did cover this earlier, but the biggest risk is usually what you're giving up. So let's say you're spending a lot of time on a particular marketing program. Let's say it's a social media program, and it may not be giving you good results, but you keep doing it because you can't think of anything else. Well, you may be giving up another alternative way of marketing that could give you a 5 times return or a 6 times return, much better return on investment. So the return on investment in the other alternative is your risk, or your opportunity cost is what you may be giving up because you're focusing on one thing. Some of you are focusing only on networking as an example, not really looking at other forms of marketing. Some of you are only looking at certain isolated kinds of social media. You're not trying other kinds. You're not really seriously looking, or you gave up too soon on content marketing, as an example. Okay, next question. What is a good, okay, yeah, I already covered this. But a little deeper, it's really what is a good ROI is the question. It's a function of your risk tolerance sometimes. So it varies, you see, from person to person. Some people have higher risk tolerance, so they're willing to take a lower return, you could say, in a short period of time, but go for the larger return over a longer period of time. So there are many ways that you can do that. And it's a function of your risk tolerance. It's also a function of how big your dreams are. So you have to look at all that. It's also a function of the time period involved. If it's 1 year, you may expect a larger return. In some cases, you may expect a medium return. It depends on the industry, your target markets, etc. So it really does vary. Okay. Quick question here from Suzanne. Is it at all possible to make this huge jump and make more money without risking a lot of money? That is one thing I don't have money. Yeah, I believe it is, because that's how I did it. Well, I did it at certain points in my career. Didn't have to spend a lot of money to make the jump, but I had to put in time. Somewhere, the universe, I'm not trying to be woo about this at all, it's just science. Somewhere, you got to pay the piper, typically. Not all the time. Sometimes you're lucky and you find a really good market, and it becomes so easy. That doesn't happen all the time. But guess what? To find a market, you have to put in the elbow work, the elbow grease to find the market. Get online, do the research. Some people resist doing the research. I understand. I've been there too. But somewhere you got to put in the effort. So do you have to spend a lot of money? Bill and I are of the opinion you really don't have to necessarily. But here's the distinction. When you put down more money, you tend to have more of a commitment level, more of a fire burning. Now, this may vary from person to person. I'm not trying to impose it. I'm not trying to convince you that you have to spend a lot of money on a marketing program with us necessarily, although we love to have you do that. We love to have you do that. It's the truth. But we're not trying to coerce people to do this. I want to emphasize this. You got to look at yourself and go, listen, if I'm not really producing the results, what's going to shift my way of being, my psychology on a day-to-day basis? And you see, I know for myself, when I invest a lot more money in a structured program, as an example, and put money down, or put some money down in some kind of, I also spent a lot of money on a video training program and some video equipment recently. I spent quite a bit of money on a system that provides some leads, very good leads for joint venture partners. I decided to invest some money on that. Now all of a sudden, all that procrastination starts going out the door. I'm not saying you are procrastinating, but some people are. All the things that you resist, sometimes you resist doing the content. Believe me, all that resistance will start melting when you put money down. So I'm not saying you have to put a lot of money down, but if you do, it can make a huge difference. Okay, so I hope that answers the question. Now, again, the real analysis in all of this, from a mathematical and business point of view, taking the psychological point, which psychological part is also important, but if you just look at it from a business point of view, look at the return on investment. That's where the answer lies. And sometimes it makes sense to spend more money. some people, my parents understood this in early days in Singapore. They invested in real estate. It was a big sacrifice for them. They had to give up certain luxury things that they want to go for, save money for the real estate, and also make sure they had 3 sons that went to school and pay for that. And they did all that. It was hard for them, but they were willing to do it. It's the short-term suffering that I talk about. You have, to get the long-term joy, you have to do short-term suffering sometimes. You may have to invest, you may have to cut down on expenses in other areas in order to spend more in your education, in your personal upliftment, if that's such a word. Yeah, you may have to do all that. So I hope that makes sense and that grants some wisdom there. What do you mean by greater investment stakeness? I just covered that. So I think you get again, if you have something at stake, you'll know it because there's a fire lit underneath you. All of a sudden you're in action. Now the clients who sign up for us, we have a good structure for them. They get daily emails, they get short phone calls, etc. There's a lot of structure underneath them getting stuff done. That lights a fire underneath you to get stuff done. So what I mean by greater stakeness is when you invest in something and you have, and you want to recoup your investment, and that drives you, motivates you to go past your challenges. How do I know I'm ready? I'm not sure what this question means, but I think you mean how do I know if I'm ready for a big business, or how do I know I'm ready for a coaching program? I'm not sure what you mean, but the question again is you got to ask yourself, are you willing to invest money, time, and energy to make it worthwhile? Are the results worthwhile? Are the results that you're looking for worthwhile? Is the time and investment you're going to spend worthwhile? Worth the short-term suffering, the change in habits that you'll inevitably have to do? The other question I ask, how tired of your old results? If you're not that tired, maybe you're not quite ready. But if you're really tired of it, you're sick and tired to the point where you're willing to do something, spend some money, invest some money in yourself, you could be more ready. Okay. If you're willing to have more, if you're, this is a very important question a lot of entrepreneurs have to ask. Are you willing to have more? The truth is 90% of entrepreneurs, I think, really are not willing to have more. They have a dream that they like to have more. They look at other people and what kind of vacations they do, and they go, I wish I had that. But I'm not really willing to invest as much as I could to get there. That can be a very dangerous place to be in, because then you tend to go into up and down investment of time and energy. Whereas, you want to have a concerted effort. It doesn't mean you're not going to have bad days. Of course, you're going to have bad days from time to time. But if you have a fire underneath you, you're going to get up on a bad day and you're going to go, I know I have a bad day, but boy, I owe this homework to Sunil and Bill. I got to get it done for my business, and I'm going to get it done. Right? So you got to ask yourself, are you willing to have more? And again, I think to answer this question, you got to ask yourself, are you willing to trust yourself? And inside of that question, are you willing to value yourself, your business, your family above all your concerns and your fears? And I understand that fearful place. I used to be there too. Even from time to time, even recently, sometimes it comes up for me. I do understand that. I feel for you. Bill and I feel for you, because you've been around the block a lot. We know the authentic times when we really don't feel like doing, you feel like just wrapping it up and go, you have enough money, you can go off and do something else. But you got to ask yourself, are you willing to trust yourself, discover your reliability by playing a bigger game? So I hope that makes sense and it's internalized. Okay, Susan asks, for the title of this webinar, what product do you focus on and where you saw these results? I'm not sure what you mean by that question, Susan. Kind of vague. So lost there. I'm not sure what you're asking. But you can probably sign up for a strategy session and find out. What I'm going to invite you all to ask is, don't ask about me. Ask about you. Okay? Because we're cooked. Bill and I are cooked. We know what we're doing. You want to find out in your own customized way for your own business what's going to make sense and how you do that. And that's important to understand. I think maybe you're asking, I'm not sure. I mean, I can only share the pain points. We understood the pain points. So I hope That makes sense. Jim, do you have any parameters you would put around your counseling, for example? Do you do e-commerce business or content-driven business or both? Yeah, Jim, we do all of that. We do e-commerce businesses, content-driven businesses. We've done service-oriented businesses. Do you look at affiliate business? We can talk about that in our strategic session, Jim, because it really depends on the nature of your industry, etc. I've got some insight into that I can share. I'm sure Bill can share a lot about that as well. We prefer people to do content marketing, but hey, we're open to ideas. Results don't lie. If you're getting results from affiliate, we can measure it and we can test certain things, then but we need to talk more, Jim. Okay, so you want to apply for that strategic session. Who would you characterize your sweet spot value to your customers? Oh, do you mean my sweet spot in my market? I guess that's what you mean. Small business owners, usually at the midpoint or they're starting out and they're ambitious enough. Their pain points are usually they have lack of time, but they're also looking at getting to the next level. They're at a plateau. Whether you start or you're in the mid-level of your business, you're looking to get to the next plateau and you don't know how. And you've been spending a lot of money on trying different things, but they've been failing. And you know that to a certain point, you're competent and you're reliable and you're ambitious enough, but you need more focus and dialogue. Because the dialogue is where you're going to get you out of your head in your decision making on a day-to-day basis. People who are in our market, our sweet spot, understand this right away. They usually say, no brainer, we're going to work with you. So I hope that makes sense. Susan Lakin, maybe she means the seminar was advertised. You telling how you made 70K in a year, in a weekend. I don't know. Not sure. Like I said, we try to present as much as we can. We presented some abstract stuff, but you got to understand the abstract stuff. And then the only way you can really get the details is to customize it to your own specific instance. So you got to look and see, what your target markets are. People, I tell them blue in the face. The smarter, more savvy entrepreneurs understand this right away. You've got to look at your target markets. You've got to understand your target markets. And if you're not understanding your target market, you're probably not selling as effectively as you can. All right, more questions are coming down. Do you have any suggestions for tools to track and measure ROI? Raghu asked. This is a good question, Raghu. There are many ways to do this, okay? But again, it depends on, I'm not trying to evade the questions here. I'm just trying to really say that most businesses are so complicated. This is why we like to do more one-on-one work. So if you're really interested in finding out how we can track and measure ROI, listen, I come from a systems engineering background, so I can tell you lots of ways to do it online. Bill and I use some very simple ways. We have a very simple dashboard to use our ROI, measure our ROI and stuff for different things. Sometimes a simple Excel spreadsheet, looking at visitors, ROI. A lot of the software that we use to get opt-ins into our marketing actually measure that automatically, so we look at that as well. Bill and I actually do a daily report on webinar opt-ins, etc., because we look at a specific software. ClickFunnels, as an example, does that. A lot of sophisticated email reporting, email content systems like Entrepreneur, OAP, Infusionsoft do that as well. So, but again, so you got to be very careful about this, Raghu, because you got to look and see again what your target market needs are, and then create your dashboard and measures based on that. So I hope that makes sense. That's the most important thing to understand here. Okay. I know a lot of you have questions on specific questions on your business, etc. The best place to answer that is in a strategic session. And again, I'm not trying to evade the question, I'm just telling you the truth. You got to get customized answers to your particular questions. Okay, so let's see, one more thing here. Yeah, Margot, the question, the topic of the question was how to generate something. Yeah, we did address that. I already addressed that. I think you're missing the main point. The main point is you got to get your target markets flat. That's what we did. We got our target markets flat. We understood what our target markets were. We did the interviews to discover what those pain points were. And if you have any specific questions apart from that, we'll be doing other webinars on this as well, on this topic, so we'll get deeper into the details. But a lot of questions that we got from people were, how do you start defining your target? One of the first things you got to do, first step is you got to define your target markets, what their pain points are. You got to understand your pain points, because if you don't do that, you're not designing your webinars right. And if you don't design your webinars right, people are not going to convert. So I hope that makes sense. Okay. And so again, if you have any questions, you want to get on a strategic session, the website for that is yourvipss.com. Make sure you get on that site and apply for a session with us, and we'll answer these questions happily. If you want more details on how you can make 70K or do a 70K launch specifically for your own site or your own website, we'll cover that as well. But like I said, I want to emphasize this main point. You gotta start with understanding your target markets first, then design your sales funnel based on that. Okay, so if you have any questions inside of that and details on how to do that, I'm happy to answer that. But like I said, you want to get on your VIP SS. Make sure you fill in the right details so we can approve the session with you. We got a limited time. I think next week is almost filled for me. The following week is available. So make sure you fill in the form as soon as possible so we can get you in our schedule. Without much further ado, I know we went over time here. I didn't mean to, but I know there were a lot of questions, so I wanted to answer as many of those. There's still questions coming in. I'll answer all those questions by the end of the day, I promise you. But I thank you again for your time, and I look forward to seeing you in the future. Make sure you apply for the session at yourvipss.com, and we will talk to you soon. Take care. Have a great day.